No sooner did he get puffed up on his little ego trip, where a voice literally came down from heaven and said, "That's it, Nebuchadnezzar, your kingdom is done, you're through," for that period of time anyway. Verse 32, "And they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will." And again, I'll make mention now, this 7 times, whatever period of time that wound up being, on our calendar or their calendar at that time, it wasn't necessarily 7 years. Some have said it was perhaps 4 years, but whatever the period of time, it was 7 times. And again, as we know, there are 7 dispensations to this age before we get to the eternity, which is new beginnings, and the 8th dispensation after we get through Judgment Day, after anyone who offends and does not make it into the eternity goes into the lake of fire. But there was, whatever the time frame, 7 times would pass over Nebuchadnezzar. And again, this is documented in secular history, where we find in inscriptions from that time that there was a period of time in which technically Nebuchadnezzar still, it was in the time frame of his reign, but he did not reign for a period of time. He really did not do anything. He wasn't active in his own kingdom, and no doubt that was when he was going through his madness, you might say. Verse 33, "The same hour was the thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar, and he was driven from men, and did eat grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagle's feathers." All matted and messy and long, hair that was not trimmed or cut or shaven or anything like that, just allowed to grow out of control, and his nails like birds' claws, again, his fingernails growing out of control as well. And, I look at this verse, and I'm reminded of something that happened in the present day that Pastor Arnold Murray of Shepherd's Chapel brought out as an incredible type, as an incredible example that basically followed this to the letter in God's Word, documenting for anyone with eyes to see and ears to hear, who could pay attention, who could understand that God's Word was real, that God's plan was still very much in effect, that we were moving along quite nicely on God's prophetic timeline. And what we had Saddam Hussein, who was ruler over Iraq, which that part of the world is basically where the Babylonian kingdom was set up during Nebuchadnezzar's day. Saddam Hussein, you may recall, even fashioned himself another Nebuchadnezzar. But when we went into Iraq for the second time, and when we overthrew Saddam Hussein, 7 months after that took place, we found him in the desert in Iraq, underground. We pulled him out, and his hair, of course, was unkempt, was unruly, was a mess. His fingernails were long and a mess, and he pretty much resembled probably what Nebuchadnezzar resembled at that time way back when. So we had this living modern-day example given to us by our Father, as He is always good to us in that sense, and again brought out in a terrific fashion by Pastor Arnold Murray when he made mention of that. But anyway, verse 34, after Nebuchadnezzar goes through his period of living like an animal, he finally gets his reason returned to him. 34, "And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up mine eyes unto heaven, and mine understanding returned unto me, and I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation." And again, that's how this 4th chapter of the book of Daniel started out, with the 3rd verse, where, going back here, it says, and this from Nebuchadnezzar, speaking of our Father, how great are his signs, and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. But finally, when Nebuchadnezzar got off of me, look at what I've done in my life, and look at what I've done in my kingdom, and realized that all of the blessings and all of the power and all of the authority and the right to rule came not from his own work or his own skill or his own power, but was given to him by God. And once Nebuchadnezzar set his eyes upon our Father rather, then his sanity returned to him, his clarity of mind returned to him, and as we'll find out, his kingdom would also be given back to him, even greater than what it was to start with. And by simply getting right with our Father, by simply setting his mind upon God, he became greatly blessed. And not only did he become greatly blessed, but he became a believer as well. Verse 35, and all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing, and he doeth according to his will in the army of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say unto him, what doest thou? I mean, just try to stop his plan. Just try. Actually, I say that not so much in jest, but I'll say that best advice I could give is don't try to stop it. But even if you were to try to stop it, you would not succeed. And there is no one who can rationalize or reason with God or debate God. There is no one who has the understanding or the intelligence or the awareness that our Father does. And so, indeed, nobody's going to ever ask, well, God, what in the world do you think you're doing? And there may be some who would, during if they're going through a tough time or a struggle, a down period in their life, may be tempted to ask that or to wonder that. But certainly our Father knows very much what he's doing, knows very much what's going on in this world, in everyone's life, in your life, and has everything well in control, and does it for the good of his children who love him. Verse 36, at the same time my reason returned unto me, and for the glory of my kingdom mine honor and brightness returned unto me. And my counselors and my lords sought unto me. And I was established in my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added unto me. And this would have been quite the thing, I'm sure, where all of a sudden people kind of remembered Nebuchadnezzar and went looking for him, and of course found him. And Nebuchadnezzar not only had his kingdom and his reason and his clarity of mind restored to him, but again, we can read from this that he was blessed by God. And, that's the way it'll always work out. Anytime that things aren't going quite right in your life, anytime that you start to have some struggles and some problems and maybe some things that just seem a little too difficult for you to handle, if you take your eye off of our Father, then you're just going to have even more struggles and things will get even tougher for you in your life. But if you set your eye and your mind on him and, let him know that you love him and ask him for some assistance, then anything that you have that is causing you trouble in your life, that that is causing you difficulty, that is, again, clouding your own mind, by setting your eye on him, by looking to him, by serving him, And by asking for his help, he will clear your path for you, to where everything that is holding you back or holding you down or giving you trouble will be knocked right out of your path. And you will be successful, and you will be blessed in serving him and in loving him. And don't ever forget to thank him for that, as well as Nebuchadnezzar would in this 4th chapter. 37, now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth, and his ways judgment. And those that walk in pride, he is able to abase. And he certainly did abase Nebuchadnezzar for that period of 7 times. Again, however long a period of time it actually was that went over him. But you know something? It was for the good of Nebuchadnezzar. It certainly got his attention. And Father's correction can be rough for a period of time, but if he needs to get the attention of his children, he'll do it. And certainly when one gets corrected and understands that correction and understands that it's discipline out of love, as Nebuchadnezzar would understand, then again, they can even thank the Father for that and get back to serving him and get back to being blessed. But that was chapter 4. We move on now to chapter 5. And at this point now, as we make a transition of sorts, Nebuchadnezzar's time has come to an end. His time as king over the Babylonian kingdom has ended. His life has ended by this point. We move forward. This would come to a conclusion in about 454 BC. We move forward now 28 years to 426 BC. And Daniel is getting up there in age as well. He would be about 87 years old at this point. And Nebuchadnezzar's son has reigned for a time, and now we have his grandson, who is actually reigning at this particular time. So, Daniel chapter 5, verse 1. Belshazzar, meaning Prince of Bel, or Prince of Baal, Prince of Satan even, when it comes down to it. So, we'll find out that name probably fit pretty well, unfortunately. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the 1,000. So here we have a king that just likes to party, or at least he liked to party during this particular time. And they were having this great kind of drunken feast. And by the way, Bullinger mentions in a companion Bible here that this hall where they were having their little drunken party, that it was found, that it was excavated through archaeology. It was found to be about 60 feet wide and 172 feet long. The walls were ornately decorated with painted stucco designs, and so it was probably quite the place where, again, they had their little drunken orgy or drunken party going on here. Kind of a good time king. Again, how did he reign over Babylon? Well, probably not very well. He would lose the kingdom. But here he and his friends certainly very happy to get wasted, so to speak. Verse 2, Belshazzar, whiles he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels, which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. Now, these would be cups and vessels, of course, from God's temple, that originally in Jerusalem, that Nebuchadnezzar had in his possession, but the Nebuchadnezzar, even being a pagan king, still had some respect for, to not use them in this fashion for some big drunken party, and to disrespect our Father in that fashion, which we'll find that Belshazzar would disrespect God in even a worse fashion than simply bringing out the the vessels from his temple, the cups from his temple, to